Hello.
Ooh, hola. Bonjour.
Which is probably more appropriate for this episode.
Indeed. I'm having
Well,
a pretty good day. The weekend's here. I've been off since yesterday. Monday's a holiday, so I don't have to, log back in until Tuesday. And you are on vacation, right? Or
I was
break?
always I was always on vacation, but I'm also in the middle of, like, being hurt, so I don't
Your
know when
back is still a little.
I don't know when I'm going back to work officially, like, the bedside. I have 1 more week, and then, um I have restrictions on what I'm allowed to do. So that's
Oh
gonna depend
no.
on what work has that they can have me do under my restrictions. So
Oh.
I was always off this week, and the week after that, who knows when, how, where,
Oh man.
what I
Okay.
will be doing. But
Okay.
yeah, it is what it is. Oh, I did to do one thing today and I didn't get to it yet. And I don't know if I'll be able to do it before things close, but I will try. I have to try to get physical therapy going, but it's very difficult with like workman's comp.
Good old PT. Well, is the pain at least has it
Hold on.
decreased?
Yeah, it's getting better as long as
Okay,
I don't
good.
do certain things.
Good.
Um, we're gonna pause for a second so
Okay.
Jesus can come through. No, come through, babe. If you want to come through. Anyway, never mind. So but, yeah, no,
Yeah.
it is getting a little bit better. I just need to see when these people's hours are. Oh, 8 p.m. I could definitely call them.
Oh,
Okay.
that's perfect.
Um, yeah. So, that's the old pictures. That's not where they are now. They've moved. Anyway, no, but if you've ever been on workman's comp, you will know how frustrating it is to get anything done, um, because it all kinda has to everything you do has to be, like, super approved. So,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's not like doctors just direct everything, like,
Mhm.
doctors it's almost like they make suggestions, and then workman's comp tells you if you can do it.
They're like, "Wait a minute. Let us see."
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's just everything takes a really long time, so that's really frustrating, but no, it is better. Um, it depends on what, like, I'm doing throughout the day. I've been doing very little, and then yesterday was a big day for me. I was in the car a lot going to the doctor and then getting
Mm,
prescriptions, and then we bought a car, and then so, like, I wasn't laying around like I usually do. So I'm a
yeah.
little fatigued from that. I slept in later than I meant to this morning as a
Oh,
result.
by the way, Kyra and Caleb love your new car. They said
Oh, thank you.
congratulations on your new ride, and they are
Thank
both
you.
very happy that you have moved to that brand. So,
Yes, I got a Toyota RAV4 for anybody who
mhm,
cares,
mhm,
and I was very determined to get one. I asked around, and I had driven one when I, rented a car one of the many times my old terrible car was broken, and it works for me.
yeah. It looks really good,
Yeah,
and I love that color. So,
thank
congratulations, my
you.
friend.
I like it too. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I am back on the roads, everybody watch out.
Woohoo!
Well, it's been almost 2
It's been like a
months
few
since I've had a
months.
car. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been about 2 months, so it was time.
yeah,
It was time. Yeah.
yeah.
When Jesus had to call out so that I could go to the doctor, um, that was like, it's getting a little ridiculous.
Right. Like, okay, I guess I need to push this along. Yeah.
Mhm.
Good choice, ma'am. Good choice. I love it. I
Mhm.
love it. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyway, what have you been reading or what have you recently finished?
Oh,
Let's get into this. Get
my
into the
dear, let me just thank you. So, an episode or two back, when I was saying that I was in the midst of reading Time of the Flies by Claudia Pinheiro, Alyssa said, "You need to
Mhm.
read All Yours." Now,
Yes.
thankfully, I already own all of Claudia's books because it is my intent to read all of her backlist. So I had that. So I immediately stopped reading Time of the Flies and started All Yours. Woohoo! This was a good smacking time. So listen, it's a married couple. The husband is a serial cheater, and his wife is bananas. I don't know how other people, are taking, Inez, but she is number one, extremely delusional, and number two, she is like a little scary little mastermind. She scares me a little bit. She will see things through. There
I
are
don't
people
know.
who think things but will never carry it out, but she thinks things and then she makes the plan to carry it out and then does so. Um and
Sure does.
yeah, it sure does. So it was just a really interesting story. Would you what do you how do we define a romp? Like, I had such a good time reading this. Would that be a romp? Because I just had so much fun that I was like on this little high reading it. Is that a romp?
I guess so. If you feel like you romped, then I think you've romped.
Then this was a romp for me. I really loved it, and I'm so glad that I mentioned Time of the Flies during our recording because I would not have read this first. Because I don't read synopses really unless we're doing our anticipated reads for these shows. But so now that I'm back to reading Time of the Flies, oh, like everything makes so much more sense, and I have, like you said, I have a better understanding of her situation and of her as a person. So
Mhm.
reading All Yours has made me even more excited and interested in Time of the Fly. So I cannot wait to finish this. So I dug back into this yesterday.
Yeah, my hope is to get into that sometime this week. I've got, like, a lot of things going, but I'm trying to get into that and a couple other things by the end of the week, so I can get some things done maybe this month. We'll see. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll have more time. Maybe I won't have more time. I have no idea what's
I mean,
happening with my
I
life
I hear
in
you.
1
I
week.
have a lot of things going to. I even have Les Mis going.
I know. I saw you announce that, and I was like, "Wait, do I start that?" And I said, "No." I said, "You don't have the time for that. Don't do that. Stop that.
Well, her reading schedule is really low key, which is nice and slow. So you can get on board.
Don't encourage me. Not
Okay, I
not
want to.
good.
Don't do it. Okay, don't do it.
I'm
Don't
still
do it.
behind. I'll
Okay.
jump in on somebody else's read one year, it'll happen,
Okay.
but not this year.
All right.
It's
What are you
more
reading?
prudent for me not to do that. But I just wanted to say with Inez that I kind of understood her. And, like, yes, she's batty, like, she's bonkers, but I think there's so much of the psychological and the way that she is written, and you really see how somebody will create lies for themselves to be
Yes.
able to exist within relationships that are flawed. Like,
Mhm.
you create these, like, lies so that you can cope, so that you can have blinders to the things that are happening, but
Mhm.
she gets into this situation that she cannot rely on those coping mechanisms. She cannot
Right.
be blind to things anymore.
Yeah.
There's no room for that. And so she just spirals, and it is crazy. And I what I'm interested in for Time Flies is how the bits about her daughter and her relationship
Mhm.
develop, because we don't get enough of that, I think, in All Yours. It's also very short. We get these, like, hints of something,
Right.
but we don't know what that something is,
Because her
and we don't
daughter
know
does
the
not
background of all of
like
it.
her.
No, and so I'm hoping that with a chunkier book that seems to be mostly these 2 characters having, like, plot lines, um, from what I've read of the synopses, I could be very wrong, I'm hoping to get more about that dynamic, because
Yeah,
we didn't
there's
get enough of it.
something there, and I also thought it was really interesting because, um, Inez's daughter, they really have this very, like, bumpy heads kind of a relationship, but she has made several mentions Inez has made several mentions of her own mother, where it's like,
Mhm.
I don't think they got along that well. She says later on, and this is when she's like getting this plan together, because she's gotta save their family. It's her and Ernesto. She's gotta save this family. And
Yeah,
she says, like my mother, who achieved nothing in her life apart from hatred of my father, a hatred which left its mark on her alone, because I talk a lot about it, but he was her life, her man. I was on the outside. So there's some stuff There is a
But,
lot
I
of
mean, that
stuff.
definitely mirrors her relationship with her own husband. She
Absolutely.
has abandoned basically anything that was hers
Yes.
to be this, like, wife and wife I would say mother, but I
Yeah.
think the being the wife was way more important in her,
Mhm.
like, list of priorities, and how that respect isn't really, like, given back to her. When he, like,
Mhm.
comes home from that business trip and is just like, "Do my laundry."
Right.
I was so offended for her. I was like,
Yeah.
"Ma'am, you are
Yeah.
better than this."
I mean, if you're reading all yours, her husband Ernesto makes you punch the sky so many times throughout this book. He
He's
infuriates
terrible.
you. He's awful. He's absolutely awful.
Absolutely
So,
terrible, and he gets, like, worse with every reveal.
he does.
He really gets worse with every reveal.
He does. Yeah.
Um, I will start here. Excuse me. I have jumped back into the world of Hob. So
Ooh.
we started, 20 Man, which is the 3rd trilogy in Realm of the Realm of the Elderlings, and I am very much enjoying myself. So this one
Oh.
starts with Fool's Errand. We are back with familiar characters from the 1st trilogy. They're older, they've grown up, things have happened, and it sounds like they're gonna get pulled back into the life well, some of the things that had happened in, the 1st trilogy. I mean, I'm very early on in this, but it's just really nice to be back with characters I already know and getting more on them,
Yeah.
and I just missed Hobbs' writing. She's really, really I love her. I love her so much, and I love these covers so much, and I just wish there were more cheesy fantasy
Those
covers
covers are
for
great.
'cause after this trilogy, I think they get like, they don't have these anymore, like, they stopped doing these cheesy mass market paperbacks, and they have different, more, like, sleeker, modern covers, and I
Mm,
don't like them.
yeah. It's like how I love,
Mm.
the Wheel of Time series, all those original cheesy covers. I think they're fantastic.
They are.
I love them.
So, yeah, and I don't think I could even find this cover on, like, not Goodreads, the other one, on, what's it called? What do I use? I don't use
Bookstore?
Goodreads.
Oh,
Storygraph.
Storygraph.
Um, I don't think I could even find this cover on Storygraph. I'm gonna go look again and
Mm,
see if I can find my edition, but because I do like to try to link my edition, and I don't know if they even had these, but these I'm excited. I'm excited for more about the Fool. I'm just happy to be back in familiar
oh my
Hob
goodness.
territory. And yeah, I think this is a really beloved trilogy. I think the next one is the Quartet, maybe the Dragon one, and I don't know if people like that one as much. And then I don't really know much about the last three because I feel like you don't hear as much about those. Maybe because it just takes so long to get to them. You
Uh,
don't hear like a lot
uh,
more about like people starting their journey. But I'm really
yeah,
excited. I saw that who's that YouTuber girl, Regan, she finally, I can't remember what her name is. She's this blonde girl. I think she lives in Texas now. She's a pug. Anyway,
that is
she
Reagan, right?
yeah, I think so, right? And
Yeah,
so she has, just finished, I think recently, The Entire World, and I watched her sort of brief reactions to finishing it, and
yeah.
it just I kind of can't wait to get to that moment, but I'm
Wow.
also very I think I'm gonna be a little sad to have completed
Probably.
all of these books, but I'm excited. So, that's
That's
happening. Fool's Errand,
exciting.
back to Hob. Yeah. Mhm,
I love it. I love it.
mhm.
That's
Um,
fun.
I It is fun, and I'm sorry, I took some naproxen, and I didn't eat anything, and now I'm a little nauseous. Give me, like, 1 sec.
Oh, oh no.
I just need to put something in my stomach. Come
Oh.
here. I have a
Okay.
tiny bowl of Cheez-Its. I shall mute myself, you will see me nibbling, but better than me puking on
Mm.
the show.
Yes, that would not be good. We don't want that. It's not the kind of show we're
I don't
going after.
usually get nauseous. I don't usually get nauseous, but, I guess it's been a much longer than I thought since I've had food.
Mhm. Yeah. Your body's
'cause I've
like,
kind of been
"Ma'am,
running.
just a little something would be nice.
I've
Just a
kind of
little
been
something."
running all day.
Yeah.
So, anyway, back to the episode.
Mhm.
What are we here to talk about today?
I Who Have Never Known
Tell the
Men by
people.
Jacqueline Harpman,
Mhm.
translated from the French by Roz Schwarz, and,
Mhm.
apparently, according to you, this book has been getting some notice lately. So, okay. Real simple. Deeper underground, 39 women live imprisoned in a cage. Okay. We don't know anything. Let's get into it because I'm very excited to talk about this book.
Thank you for
This
thank you for giving me time to shove some cheese and said, "Yeah, no, we
this
know
is
nothing.
this is
We
classified as
learn nothing."
right. This is classified as sci-fi dystopian, right? But it's more
Yeah.
speculative fiction. Like
Yeah.
there are no spaceships or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like this isn't your what you think when you normally hear sci-fi off the top of your dome. It's really more speculative than anything. Would you like for me to read what I like most about this book while you eat some more Cheez-Its?
Yeah,
I
that would be
my
lovely. I'm just
notes.
gonna put a few more Cheez-Its in,
I'm
and
just
then I
gonna
will
read
take over.
my little note. So what I love most about this book is its vagueness, its determination to not leave any breadcrumbs and not answer any questions. Just like those women, they have been, held captive without any answers, with no way forward. We too, as the readers, have been held captive by this story, but there's no hand holding to lead us into any direction to give us any inclination as to what actually happened. And we're really left with asking ourselves, like, what was the point of it all? What happened to these women? What was the point of it all? And you know, I oftentimes enjoy the feeling of not having any answers and really being able to kind of just revel in wondering what could it have been. I find a lot of satisfaction in that at times, and I think this is the kind of book that lends itself to that kind of feeling throughout the entire book. I also think this is a book that you can most definitely read a few times and probably gather more insight as to how you feel about the questions that are posed throughout this book. Um, so yeah, those are that's my like my overall thought about it.
All right. So my overall thoughts now that I've had some Cheez-Its in my tum tum, thank you very much. Um, so I think what I really like, I agree that I enjoy the unsettledness of this entire story. You never get an answer. You never know why, how, what, nothing. You are jumped into a world with very little information and you get very little information back. Um, and I don't care. I
Right.
think that at the end of the day, the why almost doesn't matter in this book. The
Hmm.
why could be for anything. There's any reason why you could be in this sort of dystopian landscape. And I think that that says a lot about sort of the fragility of society. It says a lot about a lot of things that, you can you can write a story with all these firm things like there's a fascist collapse, aliens attack. You can do all these things and end up in the same place. So it
Yep.
almost doesn't matter why. What matters is what happens next. Um, so I really enjoyed that coming to that kind of conclusion throughout, but I also enjoyed how this could have been an incredibly bleak novel, but it is
Mhm.
filled with hope because it really is about resilience, like rebuilding, female community, there's like 2 paths to take. You could be constantly trying to find why and searching for answers, or you can settle and live the finite life that you have in
Mhm.
community with others and rebuild a life that is kind of worth living in some way, like giving some meaning to this existence that we are never gonna know all the answers for.
Yep.
Um, and I really enjoyed that rebuilding, and even well, we should say there's probably gonna be a lot of spoilers in here, so if you've never read this book, I don't think you can talk fully about it without doing spoilers.
Yeah.
So stop the episode, go read the book, it's short, come back.
Mhm.
and pick up where whatever timestamp this is where you've heard me just speak and start listening again. Um, but you kind of you get a little bit of everything because like our narrator is somebody who has never known anything else and wants to know about what happened before and how we got here and has this like unquenchable thirst for what happened, for knowledge, for why. But
Yeah.
to have that period of stop where she gets to experience something like what maybe the other women had experienced is lovely to see. They
Yeah.
build community, they do things. But when it's just her again, she has back on her quest for knowledge. And it's like this you can never really escape this wanting to know, but you're never
Mhm.
gonna really know. It's very like existential dilemma, right? Like I need to know
Right.
the reasons and the whys and the what are we here for, but
Exactly.
there is no answer. Like you don't know. And even when you do find what looks like a really big clue, like the school bus, right? You don't it
Right.
just creates more questions than it creates answers. Uh,
Exactly.
and I just I loved it. So this is a fascinating book. And yes, like I said, like you mentioned, um, I think it's interesting that in the intro to this book, or at least the editions that we have, there's I can't remember who does it. I have it in front of me. I could
Your
just read
your girl,
it.
Sophie McIntosh.
um Um, so she she does a really great introduction. I don't really
She
know if I
does.
like her stories. But she talks about how like this isn't as well known as it should be. And I think that's very interesting because it is picking up steam on places like Book Talk. If you Google it or search it on YouTube, the amount of reviews you're going to find about this are quite a lot, and it would be interesting to have had Hartman see the
Yeah,
love that this book is getting, because there is a timelessness to it, and it's
for
timeless
sure.
in itself as a narrative. There is no concept of what time we're in. We have no idea. It's just a
Mhm.
time where there would be school buses, and it's very like there's not a lot of modern things. Like there's nothing like
Right.
too settling into like a specific era. So it is timeless. But it's also timeless in all of its themes and the things that it's talking about. And it doesn't matter. So I like it doesn't matter what the answers are. These are like human base human things. We want to know the whys of why we're here. We want to understand things. We want to know why bad things happen. We want to know
Yeah.
like how did we get here? There's so many questions and they're all kind of being pondered inside of this book.
Yeah. What it means to be fully human.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was a really good introduction. Which I read last because I was afraid to read it first because sometimes things are revealed in the introduction that you don't, want to know off before reading the story. So I read it last, and yeah, it was very well done, very very well done. Um, so yeah, so where do you want to start? Where do you want to kick this thing off at?
Sorry. Swallowing a cheese it. Um, that's where you just start with setting up kind of the general plot points of the story, like the framework
Because
of
we
what is
start.
happening,
Well, we
and
start
then
because what we're
maybe
doing, we're like we're
we can
reading,
look
we're
at
reading her.
specific things.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we're reading her story. Like we start like decades past and she's now writing the story of what happened. So that's like what we're reading. We're reading her story, which is, what she hoped would happen, right? For someone to read her accounts. All right. So get some more cheeses in you. So
Working on it.
um I wanna so we start with her, this unnamed narrator. Um Years passed and she's writing her story, and maybe we'll go back to that at the end and then and just jump right to the women being in the cages together. Um so it's 39, it's 40 of them total, 39 including the unnamed narrator, and she is the youngest one. And unlike the other women, the unnamed narrator does not have any like past memory of anything. These other women are a little older, so they've had lives before whatever happened happened. Um,
She was
and
an actual child when she
yeah,
was
she was a
taken, like,
exactly, she was a child. So, and it also makes you, wonder. She questions that too, like, I at some point had a mother, obviously, but like, is my mother dead? So there's never any answer as to how she became a part of this group, being such a young child with no parent in that group, because none of those women are related to her as far as we know. So that was something to point out. But what I noticed is, like, very very early on, you see um how our unnamed narrator has such a she wants to know a lot of things. She is so interested in things like love and sex, and she's already building like this internal, like, desire to, I guess,
mhm,
to feel something, because in this cage there are rules. They cannot touch one another. That's prohibited. um Hitting one another is prohibited. So she's in this situation where, um yes, they're all in there together, but there is no ability to show any affection or love or concern.
mhm.
And so those things are deeply missing, and she has a strong desire for those things. And she begins to fantasize about what it would be like to have a relationship with one of the younger guards, who she has taken quite a fancy to. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that that was my first thought, where it was like, yes, she is being held captive, but like, the heart wants what it wants, the body wants what it wants, humans want what they want, and she has figured out a way to give herself a little bit of pleasure, not just through her fantasizing of having a relationship, but also like physical pleasure with herself.
I kept thinking about, is it Russo who did the experiments of, like, nature and nurture and, like, if you raise somebody separated from society. I meant to look into this because I can't remember if it was Rousseau or not, but there were entire philosophical movements that talk about this idea of, like, separating the human from all other human societal, like, things. Like, what is innate in us? Like, what are the things that are just there and
Right.
aren't created by the world around us? And I think that there is an element of that in this, especially with the narrator and a
Yeah.
little bit with the women, because the women themselves, for a reason that we never really get fully explained, is it trauma? Is it something that happened to them? Like, did they get a chemical? Was somebody
Mm,
like, you have no, it was there some sci-fi mind eraser thing? They
right.
have only like fuzzy, fragmented connections to their old memories. So they may remember bits of what life was like before the cage, but they don't. The closer they get to the cage, the fuzzier those get. And the longer they're in the cage, the more they kind of lose, which is normal. You age, you lose memories.
Yeah.
But there's only so much, there's a limit to how much the other women can guide her, which I do like that she limits that. So there's
Mm,
always this questioning, like, and an unsatisfied answer back, because the women can only help her so much.
yeah.
They can only fill in so much. And I also think it's important that these men that are on the outside of this cage that are not paroling them, they are watching the patrolling. That's the word I was looking for.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, they carry whips, but they never hit the women. They never hurt the women. Nobody's ever
Right.
really like beating up the women. It is a very fear driven scenario. Like, they just
Hmm.
crack a whip, and the simple
And that's it.
sound of the crack
Yeah.
will teach these women, or will trigger these women to stop doing whatever it is that they are doing, which is maybe like holding someone who's crying. Like, they're not
Exactly.
maybe doing horrific things. And I think that's really important is an important thing in the story. And I think it just shows us how much, like, we are governed by our own fears as well, like, and how you can control somebody without hurting them physically.
Yes.
You can hurt them in all kinds of other ways and break them and make them follow you. It's almost more sinister in
Yeah.
in
'cause it's
and I
more
really
mental.
appreciated that dynamic,
Yeah.
um, that happened. But, so they grow up in this cage she grows up in this cage, and they're very well fed, right? Not, like, very
Mhm.
well fed. I mean, they get fed at certain times. The time of day is irrelevant. She starts trying to figure out how time works inside this cage.
Yeah.
How long are they sleeping? What is it, day or night? What is happening? And the way the guards break each other, it's not clear how long things are. And she starts being able to basically tell time herself through counting, which I thought was a really interesting
It was.
way to get your characters to understand time, especially somebody who has no concept of time. Like, she seems to be foreign to everything, right? She is
Yep.
outside of all human existence. Her existence is the cage, and that is it. Um, and during kind of all of this, and as they're working through all of this, something happens. A siren goes off,
Yeah, some kind of loud
and and they are lucky to have had, like, I think he's got, like, the key in the lock, or he's got the key by the lock.
or
Um,
dropped or something and she could
it's a
grab it. Yeah.
like, key by lock is enough that I could tell you, and
Mhm.
all the men just disappear.
Yeah,
Um, but the women are able to get out, and they're still really scared of going upstairs and
of
getting out of
course.
this bunker. Um, but they do eventually get themselves out of this bunker, and they see the landscape of that surround them, right? And
Right.
they can't even recognize where they are.
Not at all. And
And when
that
you're
in and
reading
of
this,
itself has to
you're
be terrifying too.
yeah, and as the reader, you're limited to this narrator's perspective, and she's limited in every way, shape, or form. So
Mhm.
you don't know where they are either. It's not
Yeah.
like that she gives you some context and you're like, "Oh, they just don't know where they are, but they're in Portugal." Like,
Right.
you know,
Or they're in
they're in space.
Idaho. Right.
Like, you don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. They could be anywhere. And again, I think this pulls back to this idea that, like, this could happen to anyone. Like, it erases or it flattens, I guess, all the differences into just you are a human, and this can
Mhm.
happen to any human at any time. Um, Whether it's this all happened because of a climate disaster or a war or hatred, fascism, like, you can pick
Right.
all these reasons to end up in this dystopian landscape. Um, but it can happen to anybody at any time. And at the end
Yep.
of the day, you are all humans and you get flattened to that level of existence. What do you do?
Yep.
And that's the book.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's a, before captivity and then there's an after captivity. And
Mm.
watching what happens after captivity, I think brings on a lot of emotions. There's fear, there's a little bit of
Mhm.
excitement, there's
Mhm.
joy, there's sadness. This is a whole new experience. And for the first time, our unnamed narrator, she is now able to build experiences and memories through what they're getting ready to traverse through together as a group. This is her first time doing anything. So I thought that was pretty exciting. That felt hopeful to me, just watching her experience new things, seeing the sky, dipping a toe in the river,
Mhm.
just those
Mhm.
wonderful, beautiful, simple things that she was able to experience for the first time. I really found that rather beautiful.
It was. And, like, this is the beginning of their next journey, which is from being captives
Hmm.
with really no hope
Yeah.
to being free, but free for what? Free how? Free why?
Right.
Um, what are they doing with themselves? Do they
Oh,
venture
and
forth? Do they stay there?
right. And they don't
There's
know if
so
they're going to be
many there's
free for long. They don't know what's going on. Are the guards
yeah.
going to come back? They have all these questions running in their minds. Like, is this a temporary freedom? Will more guards come
Mhm.
and capture us again? They don't know.
And what will they do when they capture us, right? Because this is a huge breach. Like, this is
Yeah,
big. Like, this is
huge.
something to be afraid of. Um, and they hunker down for a bit and before they start to explore. And I think the exploration is particularly fascinating
Yeah.
because this landscape is not desolate, but
Mm.
it is like featureless. It is just
There's
a
no strip
landscape.
mall.
There's no like there's no like mountains and like super crazy topography. It's really
It's vast and,
just
you know,
landscape.
yeah,
Because again, I don't think the time, place, um, and or the whys really matter. I think
yeah,
this all sort of boils down to humans and what drives humans to do things, um, especially in the context of like survival and community.
yeah,
But I think what's what's sad, super sad in this story is every time they find another bunker,
yeah, that was
that
hard.
hope that they have, and how you slowly watch that hope drain out of them to the point where they don't even go anymore because they're just every bunker
It's the same.
is the same, and it's just but everybody's dead because there was no one to feed them. There was no one to take care of them. There was no one to do anything, and they did not have the fortune and the luck of having access to freedom
Yeah, and they know that that could have been them. Had that guard not dropped his keys, they would
at that
also
moment.
at that moment, they would also eventually be dead in that same cage.
Mhm.
So, it's very sad to hope that there's other life out there that you can, commune with and build something with, and every time you get close to it, it's just more death, more death,
Yeah.
more death. I mean, that would suck the life out of anyone.
But interestingly, in none of these bunkers do they find anyone else as young as she,
Right.
our narrator. So she is truly unique
Yeah.
in this story. There's nobody else out there that was taken so young. So there's a huge question with her of why. Like the reason why she can't let things go, the questions, and maybe some of the other women would rather settle into the life that they build and stop wandering and asking makes sense, right? Because
Yeah.
she has nothing. There's nobody like her
Mhm.
anywhere in this landscape. There's nobody like her. Why
Exactly.
is there nobody like her?
Exactly. And her thirst to know, her thirst for knowledge is so heavy. And it is because she is so young and she's never experienced anything, and she has no answers to anything. And so she has a deeper need to continue exploring. And like you said, while the other women are pretty content and to pretty much finding a solid place to kind of like just chill out for a while. But she's like, there's more out there probably. We should check it out. We should go see what it is. She needs
Mhm.
to know. She needs
But
to know.
she can constantly pursue the knowledge that might not be there, or
Yeah.
she could take the time with these women to experience something like life and community,
Mhm.
because she's never gonna experience a period because of whatever has happened to her, right? There's so many basics of womanhood, of human existence she's not gonna experience. She's never
Yeah.
gonna experience falling in love because she clearly is heterosexual in this relationship, in this story. She's never
Yeah.
going to experience pregnancy. She's never gonna experience anything that these women have experienced prior to coming here,
Exactly.
being in this situation. But those women can give her experiences of life
Mhm.
that she wouldn't have had otherwise in the bunker, and that she would never
Right.
have on the road looking for answers.
Yep.
Because she does get to see love, because
She
there
does.
is a couple that pairs off. She gets to see, um, how communities build ritual and
Mhm.
rites and, like, routines and all of that, and she gets to see how neighbors help each other. She gets to take care of others and kind of learn affection, even though she still doesn't really, like touch or affection 'cause she never really had it,
Right.
but she can understand it, you know?
Yep.
So I appreciate that we weren't just on this journey forever looking for answers.
Right. Right. I think that would have made the book very monotonous. So I appreciated that. I I even appreciated some of the women dying. Like
Mhm,
disease happens, death happens. That I
mhm.
think I would have taken this book a little bit differently if everyone would have survived. I appreciated the loss of life throughout this story, because it made sense to me. It made sense to
Well, it's
me.
part of life. I think
Exactly.
that there's this, like, vastness to the freedom they have when they escape. They can do they can create whatever community they want, and they can make their own rules, and they can do all these things, and they can live within the confines of the landscape however they want. There's, like, no predators, there's nothing, right? There's
Right.
no tigers stalking them. They can exist in communion with each other as women, but the one thing they can't do is escape the
Exactly.
finiteness of life. They can't
Mhm.
escape death and disease. They can't escape certain things. And
Yep.
how do they come together to deal with that? Whether it's medically or whether it's in a more spiritual kind of way. How do they say goodbye to each other? How do they remember each other? Um, and those are all basics of being a living human, right?
Yep.
You're going to
Exactly.
experience loss. So maybe she doesn't get to experience pregnancy, maybe she doesn't get to have a period, maybe she doesn't get to fall in love, but there's things that we're all gonna experience. They are
Mhm.
universal.
Yep. She
Mhm.
does learn how to care for those who are in need. She learns what it means for to give someone a dignified death,
Yep.
So I thought all that was beautiful. I really did. She was also, I don't know, like quite inventive and quite handy and with building
Mhm.
things and coming up with all these kind of things to build for their community, you know, makes you wonder what she would have been, in life had this thing not have happened. Um,
But you
you
could
know?
also flip it and ask ponder if she would have been able to have the space to be that inventive if she had been wrapped up in the confines of a normal society.
Yeah.
Would she have been trapped in, um all the normal things? Would she be a wife, a mother, whatever?
Mhm.
Or and maybe you wouldn't get to see her full inventiveness, her full creativity, her full capacity as a person, but
Yeah.
without any of those constraints, she has nothing else but to just exist to her fullest as much as possible.
Well, that was the greatest thing about her character, right? Because she truly was a blank canvas. Nothing about
Mhm,
society had been set upon her. And
mhm,
so she could just be.
mhm.
She could just be. So many of us women wish we could just be without all these other things being placed upon us. And she was able to do that, which was interesting to watch. I love this book so much. I was envisioning in my mind when I was reading about that part where they were beginning to build houses. I was just imagining in my mind what that teamwork looked like and
Mhm,
how satisfying that must have felt to be out in the open, out of that cage, now building your home with your own hands with this
mhm.
fellowship of women. I don't know that scene just made me kind of like burst open on the inside a little bit. I loved it and like I could just visualize it like so clearly.
Yeah. I saw a TikTok this morning before we were recording, and I think it's just fortuitous that it came through at this time. Um, because it said something like, it's interesting that when men were asked what would they do if there were no more women on the earth and it was just men, and they were like, basically like, there's no point. I would just kill myself. It would be horrible.
Oh,
And when you asked, I'm very much paraphrasing, and when women were asked, they're like, that would be wonderful. I could have sleepovers with all my friends, and we would have like comfy things, and we would do this, and we would bake, and it was like this like bright, happy thing, um, in a
That
world with just
tracks.
women.
Let me tell you
And
why that tracks. They say that when a couple gets divorced, men always do much more poorly than the woman because the
mhm,
woman has friendships and relationships outside of the marriage. She has strong female
mhm,
relationships, so she's able to thrive after a divorce, where men have a harder time kind of like thriving in their own lives post divorce, which is probably why most divorced men
get
remarry so
married.
quickly because they just cannot thrive alone the way a woman can. So that
Mhm.
absolutely tracks.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to think about in connection with this story, and like, and
Yeah.
also pulling in your own relationships with women. I think that like, and there's so many studies that say that those female friendship bonds are some of like the most important bonds that you have in your life. They're like
Oh,
the
absolutely.
best for your mental health. They create like all this overwhelming positive things about those relationships, and they're often like the love and the bond is often stronger than other relationships you have in your life in like
Yeah.
but in different ways. Um yes, like to see these women build their little huts and take care of each other when they're sick, and
So
you know,
wonderful.
giving them dignified deaths. I love that in there because you know how I feel about
Yes.
everybody should die how they want, and with dignity, and to have our narrator be the one who learns how to do that,
Mhm.
but then also to be left, she's obviously gonna be the last one. We know she's gonna be the last one unless
Yep,
something
we know it.
horrible happens, but there's no reason for her to not be the last one. Like, there's no tigers, there's no bears, there's no
Right.
men, there's no predator there for her. Um, there's just death, like the death that will come for us all,
Yep.
and to have her then have to take all of these lessons with her and have to be the one to decide when she's going to die with
Yeah.
dignity and have to carry those rights, the last rights for herself
Mhm.
as the last one was so sad. But also, there is still that hope. I mean, she's written this whole story, and you
Yeah,
hope that somebody will find it and learn about them and
absolutely.
will know those women. And it reminded me of I think I wrote this down somewhere here. Um, and about all the deaths and the telling of story as survival. And it got me thinking about, I don't remember who said it, but somebody famous has this quote about like, there's two deaths. There's the death of your body when you die, and that's your first death. And then your second death is when your name is last spoken, like when the last time somebody
Mm,
remembers that you ever existed, and that is your final death. And her writing this story is almost like keeping her alive in some way, keeping the women
yeah,
alive, keeping it all going, um, because there's the potential for them to survive in story
right.
with whoever may find them.
Yeah, yeah,
And I just love that.
yeah. It does make you realize how I mean, we all, most of us are readers. We read, we know stories are important, but like this really drives home how important stories are. Without those stories, like people and events and things are just lost. Things are just lost. And so the importance of a story is crucial. And I think she understood that. It's funny because when I was reading The Wall, that was a big part of that story too, because she was also writing about what she was going through, um, which I found very interesting. So yeah, I and how lucky was the unnamed narrator when she ran across that special little place where she got to kind of live out the rest of her
Mhm.
days that was fully stocked of all these wonderful things and books and like
Mhm.
how lucky, you know?
Yeah. I mean, hopefully someone will find her, or find her writings,
Yeah.
and we'll be able to understand, or what I was hoping was that somebody would find her stories, somebody who had all the answers, and whether not that she would get them, but would be able to clarify the holes in her story, and her
Mm,
story would clarify maybe what actually happened for them, if that makes sense.
mhm. Yes.
I'm like staring off into space trying to get these words out. That she could be like the final key to a puzzle of understanding everything that happened,
Right.
and what really took place, and maybe a real final truth of it all.
Yeah.
Um, Also, I think that bunker in particular, that little thing, that's the first time I really felt like this was like a nuclear winter kind of scenario.
Mhm.
Um, because that felt like the kinds of bunkers that rich people build to save themselves,
Yes. Right. Right.
right?
Exactly.
But I mean, it literally could be anything,
Anything.
because it doesn't even make sense, right? Like there's the little bits of information you have about this world they're in don't make sense, right? Like, if it's a nuclear winter, they're all fucked.
And they would have been
If
fucked immediately out of leaving that bunker,
fucked,
that
because
cave. Yeah.
there's a bus full of people, okay?
Exactly.
Um, and there's no signs that it's anything like that. It's not like radiation, fallout, there's nothing there.
Right.
If it was disease, okay, maybe, but again, what's like, it's not just in the air, because when they came up, it would be there.
Exactly.
Um, Maybe it's war, but
Didn't
where?
you
Because
agree,
there's
like,
nothing,
the way they
because
describe the
there's nothing,
landscape?
the landscape's so nondescript, like, it doesn't
Mhm.
appear like there's anything, you don't see anything really that says
Exactly.
warfare. So she leaves this really blank space and fills, like, it's just like a sea of red herrings, and, like, and
Oh,
just,
and don't forget the guards. Where do they how First of
where do
all,
they come
where did
from?
they
Where do they
go
go?
where did they go so quickly? Like,
Yeah.
not a trace of one? Not
Mhm.
one? Like,
Mhm.
and there's no indication, like, if they, like, heard something above when that first siren went off to make you say, like, something, came down or drove by to pick the guards up. They just vanished.
Yeah.
They just vanished.
But again, it doesn't actually matter.
It doesn't, because 'cause they're
It
still out there
doesn't matter.
alone.
They're still there alone. It doesn't change anything. They
Yeah.
still have to survive.
Mhm.
Um, she luckily has, like, all the food stores she could ever want, because,
Yeah.
like, where's the electricity coming from to power all these things? Like, there's so many
Right.
questions that you're
And
never
they
gonna get
wondered that,
answers
right?
to, and you
Because
can
as
sit
they're
here and you can, mhm.
No,
And you can
keep going.
focus on that. Absolutely, you can sit here and you can focus on that, and I could see how you could read this and be, like, very
Yeah.
frustrated, because 'cause you're gonna be the kind of reader that wants all the answers, right? You're like, "No, this doesn't make sense. Explain this to me." But those that's not the point. The point is not the hows and the whys of this world building. It's the fact that you are in this world, now what?
Yeah.
And this over here, the now what, that
Mhm.
path you're going down, that's the story.
Yeah.
How we got here, you could have gotten here from 20 different ways. Now what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah. And if I must say so myself, I think these women adapted quite nicely.
Mhm.
I think they built themselves a nice little life outside of that cage.
Well, I think that people generally underestimate what women are capable
Every day, Alyssa, every day.
of. I think that
Every
that's
day.
a huge theme in here as well, is
Yeah.
that it is, at no point really do these women think that they can't do whatever it is that they need to do. It's
Mhm.
just a matter of whether or not they're allowed to,
Right.
or if something's going to hurt them on the other side. It's fear-based. It's not capacity or ability. It's like, am I going to be punished for doing a thing?
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
speaks volumes.
I also really, really love the last line of this book. Should I read it?
Mm, you should.
The last line of this book. It is strange that I am dying from a diseased womb. I, who have never had periods and who have never known men. I just thought it was the perfect final line. I just
Yeah,
really
also
love this book.
those damn uteruses, they're always getting us.
Just getting in the way. I really loved it.
I loved it too. I think this is fantastic. I would love to know everybody's thoughts on this as well, in the comments, in our Discord, on our
Let us know.
Instagram, wherever. Let us know. Did you see that someone commented and said that they love your take on books because you have fabulous book taste?
No, where
And
was that?
it was on Instagram. It's like you have fabulous book taste, and they're
Oh,
biased because you guys have the same book taste.
that's hilarious. Was that
Yeah.
on our broadcast channel?
No, I think it was just on Instagram somewhere. Let me find it here. They said to look for Aboriginal books. They recommend the Bookshelf podcast as they discuss a lot of Aboriginal literature over there. But
Mm,
she also
I'll have to check
says,
that out.
or they also say, I'm not sure. I don't think that that was clear. That they love the podcast. They're a new listener, and they find themselves thinking Naomi has great taste in books. Why? Because she and I have the same taste.
Oh, thanks for listening to us, guys. We appreciate it so
Yeah.
much.
So we do love your comments. We do see them. Um, I'm not always the best at responding to things, but
Oh,
Naomi might be better. Speaking of broadcast channel, we do
speaking
have
of,
an
oh,
Insta.
hang on. Wait, one more thing before we
Oh,
go.
sorry. I've moved us on. Sorry.
No, it's fine. Now we have got to read Orlando by Jacqueline Hartman. This is her take on Virginia Woolf's Orlando, correct?
Hmm.
Gotta make that happen.
But you
Gotta
also
make
have
that
to read
happen.
Orlando. We have to read them
Yes,
together.
which I do have. I do have. I've been getting my wolves. I've been listening to you. I've
Now
got
you
my
have to read
wolves.
them.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm excited. Anyway,
Okay.
great book. Read
Great
it.
book. Pick it up. Um, this is one of our, we probably should have said this at the beginning if you didn't know, this
Oh,
is one of our reading list books for the year. So what are we calling it? I don't remember. A book club?
I just called a book
Reading
club now.
list?
Yeah, so go to our
Whatever.
website, tbrlowdown.com, click on book club, and you'll see our picks for this year, 2024. And you will also see our past picks on that same page. So, get into it with us. We picked some really good books. We try to pick books that, deserve to be read, that aren't already popular. There's enough book
Yeah.
clubs doing that.
So, 2 things now. I'm gonna say if you have suggestions for 2025, Naomi and I are crafting the list for 2025, so
That's
you can
right.
shoot them to us, translated lit, that you wanna read every other month in 2025. We welcome all suggestions.
Oh, I guess we should have
And
been
then
clear about that, right? About our book club. We only choose books that are women in translation.
yes. So, if they meet that criteria, you let us know. Otherwise, I'll just load it up with the Spectre. And
She will.
um, so the second thing, we have a broadcast channel over on Instagram. I've been playing with it, uh,
Mhm.
and I guess this could lead us into books we recommend because I'll talk a little bit about my recommendation book,
Mhm.
and the podcast channel. So I have been reading in preparation for Naomi and I to talk about it. A Sunny Place for Shady People by Mariana Enriquez. This is her newest short story collection, and I've been
Yes.
kind of just dumping random thoughts, tidbits, rabbit holes that you can go down as I've been going through these stories. And I hope it will be fun for people and to continue to do that as we read other books. And I kind of like that they're books that you and I are going to talk about on the podcast at some point to maybe
Yes.
whet your appetite a little bit, make you want to read along and join the discussion. But I really enjoyed this collection. It's marked up and all kinds of things. I
Yeah.
think it talks a lot about ghosts in different ways, and hauntings in different ways, like actual ghosts, metaphorical ghosts, the way your past haunts you, the way history
Mhm.
haunts the past, all kinds of things. There's a lot of discussions of poverty and religion and art and the occult. And it's just, I really enjoyed this. I think this is
It's so
fantastic.
good. Yeah.
And there's a lot that like evokes um like Argentine culture and spirit and things that really, I think if you were an Argentine reader, there's so much that you would be gleaning from this. Like
Oh, for sure.
there's several stories that reference this contention between the people who stay in Argentina and the people who have moved to the US. And that's like a kind of a, from formerly being married to somebody who had that dynamic.
Yeah.
It's definitely, there's a thing. There's like there is this contention sort of between the groups that were left behind and the groups that left, especially after the peso stopped being 1 to 1 with the US dollar, because
Mm,
there was a whole bunch of messiness that was going on to keep that peso being 1 to 1, and when it collapsed, and I mean, it had devastating effects on the Argentine economy, it had devastating effects on people who didn't have money in US dollars, because there was always this connection sort of, well, not maybe not always, but there was a heavy connection between the US and Argentina for some reason that I'm not fully aware of, so if anybody wants to clue me in, so there were lots of people that had a connection with the US, and so there were lots of people that had money in US dollars. And maybe they were okay, but other people weren't. So there's a rich history in here, I guess is my point. And I really enjoyed these. I think there's a lot to get from them. And
yeah.
I like her storytelling. I think that's oftentimes people shy away from short story collections because writing a short story is truly an art. For you to write a story that feels complete, you've gone through the whole arc, it
Yeah.
you feel satisfied at the end is tricky. It sounds like it should be easy because you're not writing this big, expensive novel, but it isn't. It's actually quite difficult to get everything you really need to convey and everything you want to convey in a story that's tight and short and to the point and feels satisfying. And I
Yeah.
think that she's fantastic at that. I still need to read her big chonker, um, but
Wait a minute. I thought you
I
read that.
know. No, I just said I would. Our Share of Night I still have to read, and I think Things We Lost in the Fire I need to get my hands on and read. Um, I've read Dangers of Smoking a bit and this so far, um, and I think she's a great short story writer, and I'm curious to see how her like bajillion page book is.
I I'm curious too. Now I've read all of her stuff, and
Mhm,
I am now curious. You know how I felt about Our Share of Night. It really
mhm,
did things to me,
mhm.
and
She
it
loved
stuck
it.
with me for like a long time. And I
Mhm.
am very curious to see how that book um affects
How
you.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I will
really
let you know at some point. I will get there. I will get to it all at some point, or I will die before that. But yeah, I would highly encourage you to join the broadcast channel because I hope that we will both be doing this as we read
yes.
books that are coming up on the channel, just to give you more insight, get you interested, just generate a little bit more something something so that
Just a little.
there's a little bit more of a community behind the podcast as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, some point we will discuss this collection and get this
Yeah.
up. So stay tuned, subscribe to things, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
And now Naomi has to give a book recommendation. I'm gonna eat some cheeses while you do that.
All right. I am recommending one of the best fantasy books I've read this year, and that is A Sword of Kagan, a Theonite war story by M.L. Wong. It is as fantastic as everyone has said. It's wonderful. It's a standalone book, so there's no need to fear about, oh gosh, how many more books are in the series? There's no series, just this book. How do I explain this? So we've got this emperor's army, and this Matsudo family, they are these great warriors in this army. And, you know, this emperor's army thinks that they are the best, in the world, right? And Masaki is a formerly trained fighter who has married into the Matsudo family, and she has three sons. And what you see with her is she thought that she would be able to kind of leave her fighter past behind and just kind of be in the role of the mother of these Masudo children and being the wife of this Masudo warrior. But as we inch along and as things are revealed about what the emperor's been saying about their country, which was revealed when a younger student came into the school and started talking to one of Masaki's sons about how it really is on the outside and how their emperor has been lying to them about what's really going on. And then he starts asking his mother Masaki, like, is this true? And all these questions arise. And she eventually relents and tells him about her background as a fighter. And then their village is attacked, and she has no other choice but to defend her loved ones. And everyone gets to see the great fighter that she was. That's kind of like the beginning of the story. I love this book. I love these characters. There's this one character named Suseko, who is one of Masaki's friends slash sister-in-laws, and she was the kind of friend that we all need. Encouraging, has your back every step of the way. Just kind of her own woman, not giving into the BS of whatever's going on. Just very strong, very honest. And every time she opened her mouth in this book, I loved her even more. This was an incredible story. The the people that destroyed their village, they have some interesting magical things going on, which I won't say because that's quite a nice reveal, but I found it very interesting. And I just kind of devoured this entire book. It was fantastic from beginning to end. The other thing that was in this book that I'm thinking about, like past fantasy that I've read, I don't think I've seen this before, but there was like a lot of working out of like a troubled marriage. Masaki and her husband, like they had to get through a lot of things, and you could see them actively like working things out. Also, active parenting was a deep part of this book. Masaki and her other sisters, like they're actively parenting their children in this book. So a lot of things felt very relatable, very real, very full, like a full richness of someone's entire life. I just loved it. It was very well written. The pace was great. Characters are fantastic. Just very engaging. I highly recommend The Sword of Kagan. Or is it Kaigan? I'm not sure. Just pick it up and read it. It's worth it.
I'm trying to find a book for you that I think you would like. It's not a standalone, but it also deals with older characters in a fantasy novel. There is marriage issues. I think I've recommended it before on the podcast. It's a little bit more sci-fi, and it's set more in a like East Asian sort of cultural there's influence to the story, like, it was I think there's, like, some Hinduism that's wrapped up in it.
Mm.
There may be other things that I'm just not picking up on because I'm ignorant of them, but it's very interesting. Oh, I need to figure out the answer. Oh god, it'll come to me at some point. I'm, like, scrolling through Storygraph to see if the cover will come out because I cannot remember anything, like, the whole name has fallen out the back of my head.
Oh man.
I hate when that happens, when you're like, I read a book and I have this recommendation and you're going to love it.
However,
Cannot
that
remember
title
the name.
is escaping me. Yeah, yeah.
The title has left my brain. Um,
I don't know. This
but
book was
yet
so satisfying, though.
everybody everybody loves that book. The amount that Jess Owens has raved about it at me for a while now, I do have to get to it at some point. I just, for some reason, don't pick it up. Um, I don't know why. maybe okay, so I found the book. It's
Okay.
called The Surviving Sky, The Rages trilogy. So book 1 is out. It's by, Kritika H. Is it Rao or Rue? I can't read, it's so small. It's either RAO or ROO. Um, ooh, do we have another one yet?
The Surviving Sky.
It looks
Got
like the
it.
next
The
one's coming
Rages
out.
series.
Yes. So this is either
Okay.
out now or it's going to be out soon, the second book in the trilogy. So
Okay.
the second one is The Unrelenting Earth. They're very chunky. They are very interesting, complex world, but there is a older married couple with issues that are at the center of it. And I think it's interesting. It's a lot of the more like, the other issues that aren't, like, fantasy world issues, like the human
Yeah.
issues, are more adult. Like, they are more about, like, do we start a family? How does that affect our business? Like, our
Right.
professional lives?
Ooh.
How do we maintain this marriage? Like, things that don't come up in a lot of fantasy because it's somehow always skewed, like, a little bit younger.
Oh, I just added that to my list.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
think you might like that. Um,
Oh, thank you.
you're welcome. Sorry it took me so long to get to it. I read it a little bit ago. Last year sometime, end of last year. So, takes a while to scroll down. But anyway, that's it.
Fantastic.
That's what we
All
got.
right.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's gonna do it for us. Go to our website, TBR Lowdown, for all the things, and follow us on Instagram. Join our new broadcast channel. Join that fun, and subscribe, tell a friend, leave a review. That's gonna do it for
Yes.
us. We are out of here. Bye.
Bye.